Assuming a coup d'etat happens and junior officers, say in X country, overthrow a country, then they become the president now under that form of government. Do the generals in that country become the juniors to the person who overthrew the government?
Well,
hey wadau manze, you know me. When we got wind that General Michael Langley is in the country, in Kenya, and that we could set up a conversation with him as a guest on our podcast, we couldn't let it go.
policymakers and diplomats come together, whether it's a conference somewhere else on the globe, and they pretty much says, okay, a ceasefire, then let's have peace with different conditions and agreements are made, different referendums are signed.
So a ceasefire is, let's have a meeting before we go back to shooting each other.
Yes, come to agreement. Yes, it's a process to be able to get to that level.
We still hate each other, but let's talk first. We'll
Yes.
come back to...
Yes, we see that, let's look at down in DRC.
General Michael Langley is the first African American to rise to the level of a four-star general in the US Marine Corps, and currently he is the serving Africom commander.
The global percentage of attacks under terrorism is 43% on the African continent.
From 2007, from 2% to
43%.
to 43%.
Measured by the metric of attacks in the name of Jihad or name of Islamic extremism.
And what do we attribute this to, considering that Africom has been operating in Africa to guarantee security over that period?
Now, you see the questions you ask yourself about the mandate of the US military in Africa. Today we get to hear the answers from the man in charge.
I want to clobber someone properly, but I don't have,
Okay, Dr. K.
I don't have the physical capacity.
Yes.
But you're my friend and you know the tactics. So ideally, you're not supposed to beat the person for me. You train me on how to beat the person. That's the whole format of operation.
Yes, good point. So
I'm your host, Dr. Kingori, and here's another reason to stay subscribed to our channel. Kama hauja subscribe, this right here is another reason to hit subscribe and turn on the notifications bell.
I got commissioned on 18 May, so I just hit 40 years as far as being a commissioned officer.
40 years.
Yes.
So you've been in service for more than half your life.
Oh, yes, more than half my life. I'm 63 years old right now.
So you didn't even have a memory of yourself as a civilian. It's a very distant memory.
Yeah, it is a distant memory. I do remember some of my first jobs in college before I came in. I used to work at a grocery store on base, the commissary. I used to sack groceries.
Yes.
Then from there, I worked at an oil company in the data processing room because I was a systems analyst. I was a coder at an early age. And then, but right before I came to the Marine Corps, worked a car assembly line.
Whoa.
Doing spot welding and putting the cars together. Is a car, real fast car called the Grand National.
Yes.
So in Arlington, Texas, I used to put those cars together on the line. Yes.
You were a coder before you joined the military.
Yes.
Do you know how close it is that you could have been Bill Gates if you didn't join the military? Because I read about his story, the experience with coding. His story starts in around the early 70s. So. Yes. Before you join the military, that means this is so close to you doing big things in computers.
Yes, well, by comparison, my sister, who's 2 years younger than me, we got the same degree. And so she's gone for years, coding and project manager, still there in Dallas, Texas.
Yes.
And we always compare, but I always said, when I came of that point of inflection or the crossroads of whether I was going to take my military commission,
yes.
Someone gave me clear perspective. My recruiting officer said, hey, you know what? You can become a coder, go back to that same oil company and work in a tight cubicle on the 6th floor with no window You'll do that for the next 10, maybe 15 years before you become a systems analyst.
Okay. Okay.
Or this time next year, you'll have a platoon of 30 Marines, and you could be in the Philippines helping the Filipino soldiers in safety and security in their country.
Okay.
I said, I will take charge of those 30 Marines on the other side of the world.
Wow.
That was an easy decision.
Oh, so that's how you joined the Marines.
Yes, that was the defining moment because I had to make a decision. I was right at the cusp of graduating. They said, do you want to go to the Marine Corps? Your choice. Because you already gone through officer candidate school. You graduated, and you're graduating with your systems analyst degree. You're going to go work for a Western Oil Company and work in a cubicle with no windows and coding computers?
Okay.
Or do you want to go see the world with your 30 Marines and helping people?
Okay. Okay. Interesting. You know, the perspective of us, like when we watch the American military in movies or in videos,
Yes.
If I was curious to know how you get to choose the Marines or the Marines chose you, because I believe if you ask many of my friends or fellow Africans which branch of the military they would like to serve, they will choose the one that has Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
So for you, it is the option that you got. Was there an option for you to join the Army or any other branch, or the opportunity that presented itself was in the Marines?
It was a Marine gunnery sergeant that came to my track practice one day, and he gave me a challenge.
Oh, yes, you are.
Yes, I wasn't even thinking about the military. My father was military, my brother was military, but at that time, I wanted to run in the '84 Olympics. I really did. I wanted to run in the '84 Olympics, and then I wanted to go, getting my systems analyst degree and go code computers.
Okay.
But this gunnery sergeant came to our practice and he says, hey, what do you run? How close are you to making the qualifying for the Olympic trials? I said,
Yes.
man, I still need at least 1 second. He said, you know what? You go to Marine training in Quantico, Virginia, officer candidate school. You will run in boots on the road through the hills. And I guarantee you will shave your time down and you will make the Olympic trial time.
Okay.
Just like they say in fishing, I took it like hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
I went and trained with the Marines and I came back and I said, you know what? I do run faster, but I never hit that time. But the defining moment was a time in 1983 when I went back to school. And my recruiter says, don't make your decision yet about the Marine Corps. Then I woke up one morning and I turned on the news and I saw the explosion in Lebanon with those Marines getting pulled out. And I said, you know what? This is my calling. I need to go ahead and go to the Marine Corps.
Okay.
So that defining moment made my decision. The Olympics wasn't even important to me anymore. So that was the solidifying decision for me to go into the Marine Corps.
Wow. That's a beautiful story. And I followed your conversation on the podcast with Ska.
Yes.
Shout out to him.
The Scar? Yeah.
So I saw something very interesting. You said, I was very interested actually in the career progression of a military officer to the rank that you've reached. You've done well for yourself. And there's something you say. You told Ska that what showed in you was the willingness to take on more responsibility.
Yes.
And my simple-mindedness goes to, what's the difference between more responsibilities and more money?
Yes. I mean, when you come up, an officer told me when I was a lieutenant, he says, never avoid the hard jobs. He said, you can go through career progression and take some of the jobs that don't have a whole lot of responsibility, don't have a whole lot of risk, and you can make captain probably all the way to lieutenant colonel, was just doing your job. But if you're an officer that's driven, that's hungry for more responsibility and trust, doing the hard jobs, volunteering for the hard jobs, making sacrifices, you'll get recognized. So I jumped at every opportunity. When they needed someone to go out on deployment and be away from family for 6 months to a year, and some people said, you know what, I'm doing okay now. I said, no, I'll go. I'll go. This Marine here, his wife just had a baby. He shouldn't go. I'll go instead of him. I wanted that opportunity. I made those sacrifices. My girlfriend didn't want me to leave, but I volunteered. I made those sacrifices of a relationship because I was taking care of that Marine and his young family. So across a number of years, there was times of the crossroads of making that decision. Do I do the hard job or do I take the smooth road, whereas my performance will be recorded in just by the numbers? I was going to get promoted. But no, I went for the challenges and built the record to aspire to high positions of trust and responsibility.
Okay. So does it get easier when you build that mindset of taking on bigger challenges? Does it get easier? Do you get better at it, or the discomfort is still the same?
I'll say it's galvanized exponentially, that more and more responsibility. I'll just tell you, deploying to Afghanistan, we took it upon ourselves in eastern Afghanistan, and our responsibility was build the Afghan army to the point of credibility to be able to affect safety and security across their regions, across their homeland. Now, in any normal sense, we could have just stayed on the forward operating base and to teach them academics to increase their capability and tell them, go out and patrol. Go out and patrol and risk your life without us accompanying them. We could have said that, but no, we took risk. We says, no, to finish training and for them to get their credentials, we do need to accompany them. We need to put ourselves at risk to be able to achieve their trust in us, that they can secure and hold various regions across their own land, their own homeland. So an assessment of risk, going that next step to get those desired gains and trust in those that you work with. We do that here on the African continent as well, whether it's Marines or other service members across Africom.
Okay.
We go that next step in that trust and that bond between us and the soldiers of various African countries last a lifetime.
Okay.
Bonds and friendship.
Okay. So that, this brings out a point I don't understand.
Okay.
The military support. Like we support them, we train them
Yes.
so that they can defend themselves.
Yes.
Is there a threshold to this training? Like what if you train someone and they become so good and one day you disagree? So that means you'll be fighting on equal measure. You'll disagree with someone who knows all your tactics. Is there a limit of how much training you give to someone to defend themselves? Do you train them to be as good as you or as good as they need based on the problems they're facing?
Yes. Well, let me go ahead and set the stage. When you come into agreement for training, there are some prerequisites, shared values. And with the skill set you train, they have to have a complete understanding of the law, the rule of law, law of armed conflict, moreover, respect for human rights. Because there's a lot of responsibility to become a serviceman under arms. You, in alignment with that your constitution of your country that you'll serve and defend, especially across civil society, that soldier needs to have those core values and embodiment that he or she will always do the right thing.
And that never changes.
That is the core values that we abide by. Now, has there been a departure from that in other militaries across the continent, across the world? Yes. I mean, you've heard of coup d'etats, overthrowing of the government because those values weren't resident. Therein lies why it's so important that you teach the grounding principles on which you serve within your government in the armed forces. I take an oath of allegiance to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, that's all in what we raise our right hand and give an oath. And the African countries that we work have a similar oath that they abide by for civilian governance and a core values to abide by, to be able to achieve for their countries safety, security, and peace. Those things that they march to and execute their orders and execute their mission for that end state, that viable end state, needs to be in check with each and every service member under that command.
So the bet is on the core values not changing, that would culminate to a departure from that, because that means that's bad news.
Yes, yeah, that's a prerequisite. That needs to be inherent in every service member to support a country and the Constitution.
So, and you mentioned coup d'etats, okay?
Yes.
And I've checked how the military rankings work, okay? So assuming a coup d'etat happens and junior officers, say in X country, overthrow a country, then they become the president now under that form of government. Do the generals in that country become the juniors to the person who overthrew the government?
Well, and there's been cases of where, yes, the junior members nominate themselves the president. I mean, it's, as far as the Constitution, it's not really legal.
Yes.
And so that's where over time, when we look at it from an American perspective, they're not beyond redemption. They do have to make their way back to civilian governance over time.
Then on the question of the level of training,
yes,
we are solely banking on the core values not changing, or there's a limit to how much training people can get. Like when you train, Like,
Yes.
we'll get to why you're in Kenya today and for this conference. But then again, when you train a foreign government, the military
Yes.
that belongs to a foreign government, do you train them to be as good as your forces, that you trust them to be beside you and to cover your back in a theater of war?
Well, that depends on that host country.
Or that depends on the host
Yes,
country?
yes. I engage with ministers of defense, chiefs of defense, and if we have a defense agreement of for training, and in a lot of cases, this training goes two ways. Our troops are trained by theirs, and it's an exchange of skill sets per se.
Okay.
But getting back to the root of your question, your first question, that key performance parameters is established by the host government. I want you to share, let's say cyber defense and cyber domain, or just say communications. Here's our new apparatus. Here's our new cyber computers. We want them to get their skill set to this level. Yes. That's controlled by the civilian governance.
That sounds like a menu. Like a country can come to you and say, I like what you did in Pakistan. Can you give me something like that, the team that killed Osama? Can you give me a SEAL Team 6? Can you deliver that?
Yes, and that's in negotiations and a defense cooperation agreement. That's where that's done at the ministerial level. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And when it comes to training, the different levels, like if you have some of the baddest military formations, very effective, like 6 people can go in and do an operation that probably would have required 3,000 people, right? Why, in terms of strategy, why would you need to send 3,000 people while you can just have the 6 and the very
Why
many
would you
formations?
send a whole battalion
and
just 6,
yes.
special operators?
Yes.
And you know what? You do assessment, and in planning, you do assessment, and you match the capabilities that you have to the threat. And when you do this, you go through modeling and simulation to get the sufficient force to accomplish the mission. So it's a tailored type set.
Okay.
And that dictates what you deploy to accomplish the mission.
Okay, understood.
Very efficient.
Understood.
Yes, and that's what commanders do, and sometimes that's what national command authorities actually do.
Understood. And for now, the role that you're holding right now at Africom.
Yes.
I watched your presentation at the Senate in the US, and I picked something interesting where you say that it was, in my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, you are defending the need for Africom to support African forces against emerging threats and active threats.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then you mentioned something along the lines of, if you do not do the things that you do, like the support for partner countries, your competitors will swoop in and do the same things, right?
Yes.
So is the motivation the impact of what your work will create, or the fact that if you pull out, your competitors will move in?
Yeah, and very insightful for you to look at that. I like that, Doctor.
Thank
Dr.
you.
King. Yeah, that's and my baseline point was there are other competitors that have different values. They have a different perception of international rules-based order, whether it be democratic values or whether it be more autocratic, maybe less in belief in the rule of law. alarm conflict. And then when you match, when you go through and you from country to country, you look at what is the best way for the future of African countries to be able to achieve their aspirations for peace, stability, security, moreover, prosperity, and a high freedom index across civil society. I believe our offer of security and our approach exceeds those other competitors.
Okay.
Now, that's what we think, but the decision is made by the African countries. Their own sovereignty. We want to partner with you because we see those values, we see the freedom, we see what you respect. I don't want what they want because our civil society, and as we're going to move towards a higher position in the world, in the global world, opportunities for our children and future generations, as our population grows, we're going to be the workforce of the world. Our economies are going to grow. What environment and what rule set or opportunities best fits us as a growing nation? We can only talk about improve of our offering, our value proposition. What other competitors do. But that sovereign nation makes their choices. So that's my perspective. That's my perspective.
And how do you feel when you know you're making a proposal that you feel is good for that country?
Yes.
What's the challenge in why would I refuse a good deal? Like I'm assuming, what's the challenge with African countries refusing a good deal? Like I'm providing you with a sustainable security proposal, right? Mm-hmm. What's the challenge? This seems like a no-brainer.
You would think so, but that's why when I took command, actually it was my father that told me, stay on that campaign of learning. During my years in the Marine Corps, I served in the Middle East. I served in the Pacific for a number of years. The only time I had been on the African continent was 1992 when there was famine down in Somalia. He said, your campaign of learning must continue. You can't just read a book on Africa or just talk to the think tanks in Washington, D.C. You need to go learn from the Africans and what they need to be able to evolve, to make Pan-Africanism a reality in the growth of a continent to a higher billing. So that's what I did. Okay. I do that all the time. I'm still doing it. I'm learning from you. Seriously.
Oh, really?
Dr. King, yes.
Oh.
Gain that perspective.
Thank you.
That's why when I go to different countries, it's just not just to the military pieces.
Okay.
I go out in the community.
Okay.
And meet with people, community organizers.
Okay. Okay.
That's just to learn what their needs are. Then they tell me, this is what we need for us to progress and move up in the global world order.
Okay. Okay. And military and politics, ideally on paper, should be.
Yes, I'll try to stay out of politics.
Yes. Stay out of politics. But there is something you mentioned, campaign. What is a campaign in the context of a military? Yes,
so a campaign is a series of operations that we do for a viable end state. Let me just explain. Let's just say that a counterterrorism campaign. You go into countries and there's a campaign I mean, there is a operational environment, a strategic environment that is just overcome. The government's overcome by the violent extremist organizations. And when you do your planning, you need to do your shaping piece across the set conditions for success of the military forces. The first thing is, whether it's an insurgency or just the plain old counterterrorism type fight. Yes, you do have to be able to clear, but you need to shape and connect with the people on the ground that need to be protected. So you go through this campaign phase from seize the initiative, then dominate, to be able to conquer those forces or bring those forces to the table. And then you liberate the people that were under siege by the terrorists. Okay. So that's in the series of operations is codified in a campaign. And the finality is the stabilization phase. And that's when you bring in other parts of government to be able to build civil society by providing services, education, and other things to affect peace and to hold that situation where there's no more terrorism. So all those operations consecutively is grouped into an overall campaign.
A campaign.
Yeah, so in the military sense, that's what it is.
I was today years old when I learned that some of the regular terminologies we use actually mean different in the context of
yes,
military.
Right. You have the plain interpretation in civilian life, then as far as military operations, campaigning. Yes.
And that also goes to peace training. When you say you train a military of a different country for peace. In my simple-mindedness, training for peace means learning how to apologize, like training people on how to say sorry. But that's different. That's not the true meaning of training for peacekeeping.
Yes.
How do you train for peace?
Well, and that's just it. So a campaign, let's just say that peacekeeping operations by the UN or African Union, there's a series of steps where in the military or in conflict, there is a phase that is pretty brutal. Okay, that's when, the force of wills, and that's where you get the fighting, okay, the battles. You get to a level where the policymakers says, okay, we are not getting anywhere on this. So policymakers and diplomats get together and saying, hey, let's organize a ceasefire. I mean, you see this globally, whether we're talking about Israel, Hamas, Ukraine, Russia, and the policymakers and diplomats come together, and whether it's a conference somewhere else on the globe, and they pretty much says, okay, a ceasefire, and then let's have peace with different conditions and agreements are made, different referendums are signed.
So a ceasefire is, let's have a meeting before we go back to shooting each other.
Yes, come to agreement. Yes, it's a process to be able to get to that level.
We still hate each other, but let's talk first. We'll come back to...
Yes, we see that, let's look at down in DRC, That's something that they need to come to the table.
Okay.
And I'll just say that who was instrumental in helping that process, former President Kenyatta was instrumental, and also in the SADC, the President of Uganda, they bringing people to the table.
Okay.
And trying to get peace. And so that's a process within itself.
Okay.
So some of the former great leadership out of Kenya was helping in that process. Okay. That's how you arrive at people laying their arms down and trying to establish peace.
But you lay it where you can grab it very fast when you don't agree at the table.
Yes, it's an arduous process.
Okay.
with diplomats.
Okay.
Very
So,
deliberate.
thank you. I'm a realist. So what does 100% success for Africom look like? The ideal scenario that you have achieved 100% success.
100%. That is the end state, is far-reaching, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Okay.
Just put it in the most generic terms. Holistically, when we look at our aims are what our partners want. And we keep it in those three buckets. Get security, so that there is stability and these countries develop into opportunities for their upcoming generation under peace and prosperity. There's so much talent on this continent. They just need the opportunities.
Okay.
If there's conflict, they don't get those opportunities. In the Sahel, that young herder in the Fulani tribe that is given a weapon on the name of Jihad could be the next Bill Gates. He didn't get that opportunity. He didn't get that education. He could have been the one that created the cure for AIDS. He didn't get that opportunity. So when you ask me in Africom to be able to set those conditions through our partners, you have to get stability and peace.
Okay.
So they can get the education across civil society. You know, I was in Botswana, and I went out in civil society and down into the neighborhoods, and went to an AIDS clinic, and had the opportunity to talk to young ladies, and they all had a dream. They all had a dream, aspiring to be able to start their own business and help people. They didn't care about their affliction because they were being treated for it. Setting those conditions so they can dream and take the next steps in their life and get the same opportunities as someone else. I also go around, and there's a group called Young African Leaders Initiatives. I met with them in Mauritania. I met with them in Abuja, down in Nigeria. I met with them here in Nairobi as well. They all have various dreams. And those dreams are right here, making their own respective countries better.
Okay.
Being able to leverage these opportunities to make their community better.
Okay.
That's what I see the perfect sense. If Africom could work with our partners to set those kind of conditions so that dreamer can dream and be able to hit those opportunities, oh man, my job is done. My job is done.
If that was to happen, like peace, you're not worried about unemployment, like for you?
During my tenure of command, as I pass it off to someone else,
Yes.
they will continue the same things, trying to set those conditions. But the conditions are really set by that host country that we work with to enable that.
Okay.
Identifying what are the threats that push against, what are the layered threats that are keeping progress from happening,
Okay.
keeping that young lady from being able to reach out for her dreams, the opportunity she's presented, because it's a peaceful, permissible society.
Okay. And I think I'll give you two examples.
Okay.
Yeah, while preparing for this conversation is when I understood how complex conflict can be.
Yes.
An example is the GAD Dam, the Grand Reconnaissance Ethiopian
Yes,
Dam.
the GERD.
Yes.
Yes.
And I understood the context under which each country was coming from between Ethiopia and Egypt, whereby the Nile River as a resource,
Yes.
Ethiopia is upstream. They want to build the dam
Yes.
to get electricity for their people.
Yeah, megawatts. Yes.
Exactly. But then downstream, Egypt depend on the Nile for
Yes.
for fresh water.
For fresh water,
right?
yeah.
Up over 90%, right? So does it mean we may never have peace in the context of, if I place myself in the situation, both countries have a case, right?
Yes.
Both countries have a case. Is when in my simple-mindedness, when I assess that, if everyone decides to, like, for real, let me go for my interests, it means we may never, like, really have a common ground. Is this the nature of every conflict in Africa that would explain why the idea of peace looks like a pipe dream?
Wow. Dr. King, that's a tough question. And I think we've been wrestling with that for years.
Okay.
And I had it from the perspective of Egypt when I was working in the CENTCOM region. Now I have a perspective from Ethiopia now, but that's what our diplomats do, to wrestle with everyone's perspective and try to find common ground. That's called diplomacy. And I know it's been a number of years, but they're still working on it.
Okay.
They're still working on it, but you're right. Looking at, we used to do studies out of the Pentagon, which was a layered threat. What causes instability? Number of ecosystems on top of each other across the Sahel, and what causes instability? And which threat under these layers do we go after it to intervene? And that's a challenge within itself. You know, we had to study this for years, and and even use social scientists, say, yeah, this conflict has gone back generations, whether it be the herders, farmers and herders conflict. It may be deeper than that.
Yeah.
That stokes the terrorism. Because as you look back on it, let's take the Sahel. And you look at when people say, yeah, well, terrorism is because of this ideology. But you know what? Sometimes it could have economic opportunity. That is the ideology. It could be, of course, a lot of this emanated, and I'll just go back to that one compelling evidence, that compelling statistic that I always say. Back in 2007, when this was during the global war on terrorism, the percentage of terrorism, global percentage of terrorism that was resident on the African continent was 2%. 2%. 2% of attacks for terrorism were on the continent of Africa. Fast forward to 2024, 2025. The global percentage of attacks under terrorism is 43% on the African continent.
From 2007, from 2% to
43%.
To 43%.
Measured by the metric of attacks in the name of jihad or name of Islamic extremism.
And what do we attribute this to, considering that Africom has been operating in Africa to guarantee security over that period?
There's a number of layered things the ideology. You can go ahead, you can blame it on a number of things. You can blame it on the Arab Spring. You can blame it on the downfall of Libya, coming from or emanating down from the Levant of Syria in Iraq, down through those channels of the Maghreb, down into the Sahel. Remember I said resources, revenue, refuge, and recruiting. So on top of that, and it marries up with young military-age males that don't have opportunity. Maybe their livestock or for desertification or other reasons they can't do, and they're not as profitable as their fathers were, and the same as fathers, so they pick up a weapon and they fight each other in the name of jihad. Just ideology like that. So where do you intervene there? Do you intervene by development, being able to see how you can cultivate and farm in different ways so you can get that crop yield that your fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers used to be able to enjoy for a livelihood? We don't know, but we try to set those conditions.
Which begs the question.
Yes, and it takes whole of governance. It takes that country building institutional capacity to look at that, not just into the population concentrations of the cities, but also in the rural sectors, because that's the population too. So holistically, that's what our country's leaders are doing.
I love the concept of a campaign, identifying a problem,
Yes.
coming up with a formula to solve it, and the layers to the end of the result that you would hope to achieve, right?
Yes.
It's a very well laid out formula. Is there what's the success rate in percentage for the campaigns in partnership with African countries, say for Africom?
Yes, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I'll say it ebbs and flows, because when I talk about threats emanate all the time, a different type.
Okay.
And, we adjust on how we approach it. But you know what? Our analytical research on how to approach it, we get most of it from our African partners. They tell us. All of our initiatives are led by our African partners. We don't do anything on our own. Like I said, it's a learning campaign for not only me, but Africom as well.
Okay.
African countries know their country, know their people, and know what needs to be done better than we do.
So to some extent, it is the African leaderships and the countries that we let ourselves down. The support is there, but we let ourselves down in terms of the support we will be required to ask for to solve some of the problems we face.
Well, I don't think it's that binary. I mean, there's just varying reasons why, and it does take resources. It does take institutional capacity and technocrats, and that's getting out of my lane. That's where I'm just really in the security sector, but the whole of governments.
I'm also talking about the security sector.
Okay, just security, right?
Yeah, just security.
Yes.
Like, let's say there is insecurity. A certain country is dealing with insecurity.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's a cause for concern. They would be required to ask for support.
Yes.
So Africom waits for requests from the African country for security support.
Yes.
So until the African country asks for support, you cannot impose.
No.
You cannot impose.
No, we don't come here and say, we're not prescriptive. We don't say, no. If this worked in Afghanistan, I know it'll work for you. No, we don't do that. No.
So, so now, to this extent, sticking to security,
Yes.
for African countries that are struggling with insecurity, Africom has the capacity to provide the necessary support to solve that situation until that African country asks for that support.
Assessment is done by our African partners.
Okay.
They remedy it. They do their plans, and Africom, we collaborate, and we ask how can we help, and assess whether it's in our capacity to help. Yes.
So if I can break it down in a one-on-one context, let's move from the realm of countries.
Yes.
So in a one-on-one country, if I'm your friend, right, and I'm beefing with someone, and they can beat me, so I can come. The idea of like Africom security support, I can come for you to train me on how to beat them. I can't ask you to beat them for me.
No.
I can't outsource a beating.
No. Yes, that is not. We can support you in your campaign planning and,
Show me
and
where to punch.
operations if policy directs us to.
No, this is not country. This is one-on-one.
Oh, one-on-one.
Yes, we are bringing it in a one-on-one context.
Okay.
I want to clobber someone properly, but I don't have.
Okay, Dr. K.
I don't have the physical capacity.
Yes.
But you are my friend and you know the tactics. So ideally, you're not supposed to beat the person for me. You train me on how to beat the person. That's the whole format of operation.
Yes. Good point. So the most direct correlation to that is what we do in supporting the developing Somali National Army
Yes.
who are going against Al-Shabaab.
Okay.
And they need to train themselves to a level of capacity to be able to deter them. So a number of countries within the Afghan Union support instability mission in Somalia, and other allies work towards that end. Training and building institutional capacity so they're credible enough force to be able to fight Al-Shabaab, stabilize the region, liberate the region, stabilize the region towards a viable end state of security, stability, and prosperity. That's the ground root process that we model.
Okay.
Yes.
What other challenge is there? You've explained very well. What other challenge is there? Because to be fair to you, you are fairly known, even to our audience, as even we have this conversation, and it comes from comments you made at the Senate hearing. Which, to be fair, for anyone who's open-minded enough, just go watch the clip, the original clip from Senate. What you said. Why do you think there is this element of mistrust of the mission that Africom stands for?
Yes. Our assurance actions, how we demonstrate our assurance actions matched with what we say. That does have to be a match, okay? So just start from the most generic type security cooperation type scenario. When country X has security threats and instability within the country, they may or may not reach out to the United States, in which, if they do, they prescribe exactly what they need. Hey, we, United States, we don't need Africom to come in here, but we do want to just buy equipment and arms from the U.S. It's limited in what we want. We don't need your boots on the ground. That's pretty binary. It's pretty cut and clean. But then let's take another scenario where it gets more complicated, enduring type terrorist threat. And they say, this terrorist threat is complicated because they are recruiting out of our own population. We're not getting invaded, but they're recruiting. We need the expertise for counterterrorism for our forces to be able to plan a campaign to reverse that course that is going through our society and turning the population against the government. We see it as an insurgency. We want to partner with Africom if the U.S. government directs Africom to do so, to be able to train the forces in counterinsurgency operations. And our policy to dictate, yes, for academics and training, but that country will do it for themselves, and the country may have a mandate to do it for themselves. That's a scenario that I see how that would play out. It just doesn't happen. Africom just sees, looks at the map or looks at TV and says, there's trouble. There's trouble in Sudan. Africom doesn't go there. No, it's civilian authorities at the highest levels make the determination what kind of policy and approach we're going to do. Africom, I don't make a decision to go somewhere just because I look at the news and say that we're going to, no, that's higher up. That's the President of the United States saying that through the Department of Defense, and the call of that particular country says, hey, U.S., can you help us?
Oh, I thought the military should be, I know it's fun, especially when you get, I thought watching something on the news and just packing up to go there would be more fun. Like, where are you, General Langley? I'm in Sudan, I just saw the news. As in, you have to wait.
Yeah, I mean.
There's nothing like initiative, like I'm pushing myself to.
No, we don't impose ourselves on anyone.
You don't impose yourself?
No.
Okay.
That's not how that works.
I'd like to tap into your knowledge to lay context on something, military power in the African context. Okay? Kenya, right now, I believe I'm accurate. This is my statement. I believe I'm accurate to say that Kenya is a superpower in terms of online banter. We are bad people. Like, we are bad. Bad in a nice way. Bad as a compliment.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yes. We are a superpower in banter, online banter. We annihilate countries, like we demolish countries. We've dealt with Nigeria, we've dealt with South Africa squarely. They know us. And currently, I've heard that the Twitter Defense Forces have deployed some resources to Tanzania, like in terms of online conversations. And that one, I'll not ask you about that because it's in the diplomacy level.
Yes, it is.
But in terms of conversation. But in how the world is progressing, digital, social media conversations, do you think in the future we stand a chance to, would that equate to military power?
Would that equate to military power?
Yes.
Just through that domain?
Yes.
Without dipping into the business.
Yes.
Information is very powerful. You go back 30 years ago, we never thought that something like the internet would be able to shape the hearts and minds of people and the opinions of people. Information operations is very powerful. And that's how society changes, just influencers. Let's take it out of the military concept, just influencers.
Oh, yes. Outside the
just
military
influencers and making people believe based on a narrative. Yes, that we need to recognize that is very powerful. And not just military power, just power of society.
Then now outside the social media context and into the military context, in Africa, what does military power mean?
Military power, I would say, I would model it over a professional military that is perceived that has a power projection capability by demonstration of exercises, show of force, being able to assemble, and for the effect of deterrence, to keep a permissive environment. Just the military people or nefarious actors, non-nation state actors, if they see a military is very professional, that can respond to crisis when called upon by their governments, and that exercise and demonstrate their professionalism, their discipline, that causes those nefarious actors, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that because they're very powerful. They can keep peace. We're not going to do those nefarious activities against the government. That's military power. It's a projection of perception, or the projection of force to maintain, deter bad actors from carrying out their bad acts.
Okay.
Yes.
So now, just to give context of what it takes to be a general, I read up on it a bit. Actually, that the number of active generals in service at a given time is limited by statute.
Yes.
Right? I think in the Marine Corps is maximum of 62.
Yes, it's around there. Yes.
Yeah. What's going on there? Like, please tell us, what does it take to be a general?
Tenureship and the success of executing and commanding successfully at various levels of command across time and across your career, where it shows national command authorities, especially civilian governments, that you have the capability and capacity to take on responsibilities of commandership, of greater trust and responsibility.
Okay.
Those are the basics. To make decisions in line with U.S. policy and be able to operationalize it into action when your nation calls. That you command assigned forces for a desired end state by your department.
And that is measured in time, and that's where tenureship comes in.
Yes, you prove that time and time again.
Okay.
You show that the magnitude of being able to achieve at a certain level, whereas your Secretary of Defense says, yes, this particular general can handle more responsibility, but that has to be confirmed by the president for nomination, then over to the Senate for confirmation.
Okay, you've explained very well the idea of how Africom operates.
Yes.
It is for the countries to initiate the request for support and the kind of support they need.
Yes.
But in places where military intervention is required, right? What is the threshold of intervention? Like, it is exclusively the country to initiate, or there is a place that you may need to do something for the good of humanity? What is the threshold for defending the weak when there is no request for support? For example, one of the statements given by the IPEA, I believe, it's a branch, or it was a commission organized by the African Union to investigate the Rwanda genocide. And they say that one of the most regrettable things was that the genocide could have been prevented. In fact, they say it was the most easily preventable genocide, right? So as Africom, there is some sort of responsibility for protection of the African people who are suffering, right? If there is a case where no one has requested for support and people are suffering, there is no absolute place to intervene at all.
Protection of humanity
Yes.
in a consequence. And that would still take an act of policy for Africom to intervene.
Understood.
Now, you can take it down to the tactical level. You take it down to the tactical level at its simplest forms. If a service member in Africom was just, let's say, on a patrol and with our African partners and sees something that is crimes against humanity,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
cases
Yes.
where that service member would intervene to save a life. It was like civilians.
Yes.
Yeah, now
that's
that's
what I mean.
understandable
That's what I mean.
in that
That's what
case
I mean.
there.
That's what
But
I
in the
mean.
broader
That's what I
sense of genocide, and everything, yeah, Africom, ICANN as a general says, okay, African, we need to go to country X and stop this genocide. No, that's a policy.
mean. Understood.
Yeah, that's at
Understood.
national command authority levels.
Understood.
Yes.
We thank you very much
Dr.
for making
King,
time
thank
for
you.
us. Thank you very much for making time
You
for
made
us.
me think. Yes, I like that. But I learned, like I said, I learned from you and your perspective.
Thank you,
and
sir.
your line of questioning.
Thank you.
You
Thank
are a talent.
Thank you. That's high praise coming
No,
from
I'm
you.
serious.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Good.
you. And maybe you can give a final word to anything that you'd like the African people to know. Speak to them. Just a word in closing.
Yes. 40 years in uniform. I had the privilege and opportunity to become United States Africom commander and come to this great continent, meet great people across great nations, and realize the potential, the talent pool and base of the young generation as they vie for opportunities, economic opportunities, educational opportunities. But I also realized the prerequisites, the conditions that need to be set with African militaries to set the conditions of stability so that the youth, the bulging youth, is going to exceed 2 billion by 2050. This continent is going to be the leader of the world in what it can bring to bear. But there's a tasking that we need to address conflict. So this Chad conference that we're having this week with the chiefs of defense from over 42 nations are coming together, examine what the challenges are so we can pass it on to our national command authorities and civilians to address. Because if it's addressed now, it will only create opportunities for the young youth that have these goals and want opportunities to be on a hard billing on the global stage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We'll leave an invitation for you on our podcast open. Hopefully, if we ever get a chance to have a conversation with you, I would very much like to hear now your marine story, because I have so many marine stories in my head from the movies. Looking forward to that if it ever happens.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.